Hello, I'm football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Foot Weekly podcast.
Hello, and welcome to week 21, I think, of the Foot Weekly podcast. We're really into the cycle now, and, well, there's still things happening which are sparking debate, so we'll get into that in this episode. And as you'd expect, we have Josh excels. Thank you very much for covering for me last week. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it was, we had Venny on for a kind of content gameplay crossover, I think, with the Future Stars Academy evolutions. It was a good opportunity to kind of go through what play styles from that selection we'd be looking at, what of the play styles that you could only get as a playstyle plus, but maybe wouldn't be the one you'd select, that you could get from Evos, from like objectives or from other Evos you might want to be looking at before you start your Academy kind of run.
That was interesting.
It's been, there's been a lot of content. I think there's been a lot of stuff to do, and then on top of that, there's been an awful lot of gameplay. I think in the Discord, someone said they've come back after a week away. There's about 8 different game modes that need playing in at the moment.
Yeah. I was going to say it's kind of similar for me because I was away this weekend as well, so I've been a little bit out of it. But yeah, probably more on that on the content podcast. I'll talk about why I'm boycotting Future Stars. And on this one, we'll be, and that's the supporter episode this week. But on this one, we'll be chatting to gameplay experts and one of the people behind the guide. It is Tazz. Welcome back. Good to have you back on.
Yeah, great to be back. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has actually. Nothing much has happened though, so that's all right. No, it's good to have you back. And yeah, there's quite a bit to talk about, as I was saying. But also, like, I think the first thing to cover, because it is the big kind of focus in terms of gameplay at the moment, or the thing that's sparking a lot of debate and interest, is that we had a patch. But it's not really the patch that has, caused the interest, I guess. It's more what the patch might have done, which perhaps wasn't explained in the patch. Just to start things off for context, I'll just read what the patch actually says under gameplay, just so that we're clear. And this is out, it's the patch is out. It's what you'll be playing at the moment. It came out last week. So gameplay made the following updates: addressed an issue where the goalkeeper could have deflected the ball too accurately during an anticipation save, and then inaccurate knuckleball shots could have occurred more often than intended. And then there's basically nothing else that would be relevant to Ultimate Team, as far as I know. But Josh, there was something that was very relevant to Ultimate Team in the end in that patch.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it took about 15 minutes after the patch was available that I saw the first tweet going, what the hell have they done to finesse shots? And then someone responded going, they're absolutely fine. I don't know what you're talking about. And it took maybe like an hour before the collective, what would you call them? Test squad that is the Ultimate Team player base, found out that this patch had broken finesses. Not consistently, not every time you hit a finesse shot, but especially finesse shots with like less than 2.5 bars of power, and especially kind of around the edge and inside the box, just had like weirdly low power. And it ranged from, that looked like I've just hit a shot with someone with low shot power, to that ball is floating in a way that physics shouldn't allow, and yet still going in. I've never seen more like chipped finesse kind of floating shots that have ended up going in the back of the net, because the keepers are reacting at kind of the same speed. So it raises so many questions. My first question, and let's go in reverse order here, is how was this not caught before it was pushed out as a patch? Like, it as I say, it took maybe like half an hour after it was released before people were tweeting saying, what have they done to finesse shots? Like, I mean, surely you just go into a game, hit a few shots. Maybe it happens 1 in every 4 finesse shots. I don't know. Maybe the testers just don't hit finesse shots. It blows my mind. The second part of that is they didn't touch finesse shots. Now, they have touched shots that apply curl to the ball, in that they talked about inaccurate knuckleball shots could have occurred more often. But that's inaccurate, not too fast, not too slow. There's no speed thing. And I would say that, I mean, I have no idea, but a finesse shot feels very different to a knuckleball shot, in that you can't get a knuckleball finesse shot. So I don't, it then begs the question of like, how is the game made? Like, how can you not have made any change to something and it change in a way that is this noticeable and then it not get caught? And it is, I mean, it's like slightly shambolic. Like, if you were to not know that this change has happened, to then have to say, oh, we've seen that this has happened, we're going to work on it. Like, just revert the patch. Just go back to 1.4.1 or whatever the previous patch was, and just go, hey, that wasn't an issue where the goalkeeper is deflecting a ball too accurately during an anticipation save. I don't know about you two. I've not seen people complaining about that. So can we just remove that fix that broke something and go back to like a game that makes that at least we know isn't broken in that sense? Of course, there's so many other ways that the game is broken, but I don't know. It just, to me, it's like that. It shines a bigger light again on the kind of weight and heft of the mechanisms in place at EA to change anything about this game. It is so slow and cumbersome that there isn't just that we're going to revert it. I think the only time we saw that was the change to technical dribbling when they reduced the speed of it. And they did revert that relatively quickly, but that was very early in the game cycle. And so that makes you think maybe there was a larger team that are working on patches at that point that have now been moved into working on to the next game. Because it just, it's so broken. It's so silly. I don't know why you wouldn't just go, oh, sorry about that. We're going to fix that in the background and move back. I don't know. Yeah, it
is interesting. I mean, I guess like maybe one thing to just say or ask, I guess, or to sort of clarify is, Tazz, do you think that this was deliberate on EA's part? Like, were they trying to shadow patch finesse shots? Because I think that's something that people obviously will think.
I mean, that's a fair question. Like, I would clearly say no, that was not the case. Okay. That it was deliberate. But
I mean, if they were trying to do a shadow patch, they did a really bad job at shadow patching it.
Yes, exactly. I mean, really that obvious. Would be not the way to do it, because like some of the finesse shots are fine, they are as before, and then some others are all of a sudden really slow, as Josh already described. So you really notice this. And well, like there's a lot to cover here. I think the major thing is, beside like how is this game coded, if something like this happened, as Josh already explained, is the other case, and that's also what you already touched upon, is this kind of trust issue that is now also there. Because I feel like a lot of communication in the last couple of years was, we don't change anything which is not in the patch notes. And then something like this happens. And obviously shadow patches or like things that are changed over, like this is always part of the discussion within the community, that there are changes which are not like reported or mentioned in patch notes, or like there's no patch at all. Like EA has a lot of has a new tool of live tuning as well. So it's like some part of the community thinks that this is a thing, that they just change some sliders or stuff like this, and then stuff like this happens. And now this raises also another point, like maybe EA is not changing anything deliberately and is shadow patching anything, but maybe they changed them, like they want to fix something, and they're not even aware that they changed something else, that they broke something. And so like there are like twofold problems coming up with this, because it's not just that they want to change something, but maybe they change something and they don't really are aware of that, of this kind of change. So this is a huge problem that something like this happens. Like in that case, it was really, really noticeable. That doesn't mean that in other cases it is as noticeable. And when people say like, oh, AI defending changed so much since the launch, and then like I think it was one of the devs in December or January saying like, we didn't change anything when it comes to AI defending since the patch, since the release of FC26. Well, now there could be like I think there's a valid point in the community saying like, maybe you were not aware that you changed something, and that's a big problem. And coming back maybe to the testing part, I feel like I don't know, I don't have any insight how the testing process looks from the side of EA, like how this is going down, but I feel like I can imagine there might be a huge discrepancy between how the community is playing, especially Ultimate Team, and the whole player base is playing the game, and what kind of players they have, and how this kind of test environment looks like for EA. I think that might be the reason that it's not was not super obvious that they broke something with the finesse.
Yeah, I think it's also just worth saying, because I've kind of referenced it, but we're not just saying that this wasn't deliberate and that's our opinion. They themselves have said it. They released a tweet the day after the patch came out saying, we're looking into finesse shots becoming unexpectedly slow at times following this week's title update. This behavior is not intentional and will provide an update on our investigation in the coming days. Now, we're 5 days removed and we've not had an update, but it has been the weekend. So, we'll see what comes. So they didn't mean to do this. At least they're saying they haven't. But I think that point that Tazz raises of like, how many shadow patches have people talked about in the past? And hey, I've been part of that gang that have called them, FC flat earthers, right? Like it's the handicap momentum gang that have just got, it's been shadow patched. Now, I definitely had that feeling at the beginning of the year that AI defending had changed. And as you say, they said, nope, nothing has changed. But now you're like, but do you know that? Like, you may not have deliberately done anything, but I don't know, like...
And there were a lot of things that they could break when it comes to defending AI, because they did a lot of changes, especially for kickoffs. Just remember how they changed the defending AI behavior for kickoffs, how all of a sudden the whole team was more set up more deeply, or like all of a sudden with the next patch they changed it that they are marking really aggressively. And like, it's just a certain time period after kickoff, but how do you make sure that this is not extending to the whole game? And then you see, like, even I'm completely on your side, that usually I also try to fight this kind of battle that I say, like, I try to trust what EA is putting out there. When they put out patch notes, I genuinely believe that these are the things that change. And if people, and that's part, I think, also of the whole problem, people experience inconsistent gameplay. It's very hard to assess what is actually the baseline, what is how the game should look like, and like connection or like whatever is coming together here. People, they could play the exactly same game, and from one session to the next one they will say something has changed. So like that's already like a problem. And obviously this comes all together, and usually I would always say, like, I take this as the truth here, that this is, if that's not mentioned then it's not changed. But well, this shows it can break easily, and especially now when you think about those kind of changes to kickoff, how easy can it be that a change, like how deep or like how aggressive the defensive team is defending after kickoffs, how easily can this be transferred to other situations in the game? And very hard to uncover this kind of weird. And I feel like you could also say it seems like the kind of broad community player base is noticing those kind of changes in a different way than apparently a test team at EA does.
And from my brief experience with writing code, you can create functions that you then call on in other areas of the code. So you can create the AI pressure function that like determines how close defenders would go and how much pressure they can put on. And if you go, okay, well, we'll just tune that up after kickoff, but later on in the code where it's in the rest of the game, it calls the function that you've now changed to do it after kickoff, then you can make those changes elsewhere that you've not intended to make because you didn't realize that called on that function over there. Now, that is a very simplistic view. I'm sure it's way more complicated than that, but like you can see how these things can happen. It's just, again, I go back to the testing thing. Like, it shouldn't be the case that something this obvious is broken in testing. Other things are like a feel thing of like, I play this game so much I can feel that the AI has changed, that as a tester you might not know. If you only played 100 games over 3 months, you might not feel that the AI is improved, or it might just be that, that was a tough game, rather than kind of noticing what's going on. But to not see that 1 in every 5 finesse shots is massively underpowered is just crazy to me. I will say, like, if you are struggling with it, if it does keep happening to you, put more power on them than you would usually do. Like 3 bars of power, I'm rarely seeing that kind of slower trajectory. But I've also switched out my front line and have majority low driven in there at the moment.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, I would just kind of wrap up by saying, like, personally, like I do still think that they're not shadow patching is in there, putting things into the game that are intentional and then not telling the community about those things. But I think it's like it's just a fact that they're going to be changing stuff by accident sometimes. Like, it's just like, I just don't think it's like possible that isn't happening, and those things will sometimes be obvious and sometimes won't be, which is not great for the community because the game is so complex. And like, I mean, you should say, like, the argument is that it's a huge game which earns loads of money and that they should have a better system for making sure these things don't happen, but obviously, it feels like they don't. And I guess the other thing they're doing is making more changes during the game cycle, which is, I think, a positive, or most people see it as a positive, but it is likely to lead to more of these kinds of things happening. The plus side is that we don't get stuck, hopefully, with the same bugs and frustrations throughout the cycle. But the flip side is that we could see stuff like this happen more often, and hopefully they're as responsive as they have been in the past, or were with that issue before with technical. But we haven't sort of had a confirmation that there's going to be anything coming particularly soon, even if they are going to fix it. So hopefully they do, because obviously, like, a lot of people have built their teams around finesse shots because they're so strong. I think it would be a bit different if this was a less, if it was like chip shot or whatever. Obviously, that would be kind of
people would notice.
Yeah, exactly. So that is like an unfortunate coincidence, perhaps. But yeah, is there anything else around the patch? I mean, we're going to talk a bit about the Playstyles, which obviously, I guess that does link into finesse. But
let's be honest, with Japes working at EA, they're never going to break for chip shop, are they? You can't live the chip life if it's completely broken.
One thing about the patch, like, I think Josh also talked about, like, how long now does it take to fix it. I think it shows the problem that they have with rolling out these kind of things over PlayStation or like Microsoft, or like Sony and Microsoft, that there's always like a dependency on how fast they can actually change something. So like rolling back, I don't know how fast this could actually be. I think probably is a little bit less effort required because they don't need to fix it. But I think the overall process is still probably very complicated. And like, I feel like it could be a good test or like idea for us to like, okay, even though they like, how long does it take to roll out a patch for them? Like working together with Sony and Microsoft to get it out there, because I think they probably already fixed it quite fast, but it probably apparently takes like 1 week to get it out there.
Yeah, you're right. Like, it is a big, I think, hold up for them. Right, I think we're probably done on the patch for now, unless there's anything anyone wants to add at the end. But there is further kind of EA related, I guess, patch conversation, because we want to talk about the playstyle poll they put out. So we'll do that, I think, after the break, and we'll be back in just a second. Hello, and in this break, a quick reminder that the pod is made possible by supporters. The pod didn't used to be weekly. Yes, Foot Weekly wasn't actually weekly for a time. And then someone suggested setting up the Patreon. And since then, the pod has been weekly. And in fact, it's been twice weekly, because there is that supporter episode every single week. So if you'd like to catch that episode and keep the podcast going, it's just £3 a month to do so. And you get loads in return. And there are perks higher than that, including access to the Discord too. So if you're interested and would like to support the podcast, then head over and search Support for Weekly. Go to Patreon, and it's very easy to sign up. If you are a supporter keeping the podcast going, then a huge thank you for doing so. And if you do consider supporting, a huge thank you too. Right, let's jump back into the pod. Hello and welcome back after the break. Right, so as I alluded to, EA have basically asked the community what they think about, well, I was going to say what they think about the balance of playstyles versus attributes, but it's not quite as simple as that. I'll read the question that they've asked. What they said is, we have seen a lot of discussion around the impact of playstyles versus attributes recently. Let us know your thoughts. And the options they've given are, and the poll's actually closed now, so I can read you the results as I go through this. So playstyles clearly have more impact, and 88% of people voted for that one. Playstyles have a slight edge, only 6%. Both feel equally important, 4%. Attributes have a slight edge, 1%. And attributes clearly have more impact, 2%. I mean, come on, attributes clearly have more impact. Like, anyone who voted for that, like, I don't know, remove their polling rights. But yeah, so that's how they sort of phrase it. So they're kind of asking, like, have you, I guess they're kind of trying to identify what the community has sort of spotted around the disparity or difference between playstyles and attributes impact. Whereas if we go back to the goalkeeper movement question they asked, they said, we've been receiving a lot of feedback on goalkeeper movement. What do you think about it? So basically just asking straightforwardly, what do you think of goalkeeper movement? They've not really asked what people think of it in terms of like, do they think that playstyles are more, should be more important than attributes? They've just asked them kind of to identify what they, whether they think playstyles have more impact than attributes, which is interesting. I think we talked about this before actually as well, Tazz, didn't we? Like how they ask these questions can lead to people kind of assuming that a patch is going to come or there are going to be changes. They've clearly kind of softened it a bit in this question.
I mean, the way how they ask this doesn't necessarily mean that they will change anything, because maybe they just get feedback from the community what they feel is more impactful. Is it playstyle? Is it attributes? The community clearly thinks it's playstyles, but maybe that's what EA is intending with playstyles. So like maybe they're just delivering on what they want to accomplish. So here I think they leave a lot of room open for obviously people now expect that EA will change something about playstyles, which I feel like it's leading to this. But just how they set this up, it leaves a lot. It's quite open what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really good point because, basically they could go, 88% of people think playstyles are more important than attributes. That's exactly what we wanted. That's how the game should work. Glad they also think that, But I think reading between the lines, we can maybe say that this isn't why they're asking the question, and they are thinking a bit about maybe there being an over-reliance on playstyles. Is that how you'd read it, Josh, that they're kind of considering how they can kind of shift the balance a bit?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say, 88% think they are. That's exactly how we want it. That isn't how they want it. They told us that's not how they want it at the beginning of the game, because they said they wanted playstyles to be less important. So it feels like one of those things where they've tuned it down and are kind of now coming back to us and going, have we tuned it enough? Because I think there has been conversations about the fact that it does feel like stats don't matter. And I think the number of kind of videos you see of people putting a goalkeeper up front who's got finesse shot plus and scoring a bunch of goals of them in champs, it does start going, well, actually, how important are our stats? Now, the cynic in me says that this is deliberate, and that we're now going to see a rollback of playstyles so that then stats become more important. And then that way you kind of extend the power curve a little bit, because now it's back to, you have to have the right stats. And so everyone who's got those kind of high 80s, low 90s has now got 10 more stats to grow in terms of how good they are. And if they start scaling your ability, where each stat as you get between like 90 and 99 has a significant amount of importance in how well you can execute something, then you can extend the power curve. I don't think that's the case. I think that the way that Evos have worked this year, and the fact that people have kind of embraced Evos in a way that I don't necessarily think the community had done before, because they've been able to build these almost perfect players with the perfect set of playstyles for each position, which may be a tease for what we might get onto later. But that ability has meant you now have the best playstyles on your players, and what people are noticing is they perform better than players with better stats. We talked about, to go to an extreme example, like Team of the Year 𝗏𝘀𝘁. He's got very good stats, but his playstyles are lacking in really significant areas. And so whilst he will still perform okay, lots of people have used him and gone, I'll go back to my Evo, because I've got an Evo card that performs better, even though visually it doesn't look better. So for me, I think I was surprised at how much the community, to get 88% of this community to vote for one thing in a 5-option poll is impressive in and of itself. I will say there's a thing called extreme response bias, where if you give people a choice between 1 to 5, they're much more likely to choose 1 or 5 than they are to choose 2, 3, and 4. And so if it was me and I was answering, I would probably say playstyles have a slight edge rather than more impact. I think the reality is that playstyles have the edge that wins you games in Ultimate Team. But as the game as a whole, actually, the number of games that you would play where Playstyles make the difference between you winning and losing the game is quite small. It's just when we are skill matched as closely as we are in Ultimate Team, it makes that difference. It is that edge that heightens the importance of it. It's kind of like when we've talked about in the past, there's no handicap or momentum or anything. It's just when those 50-50 things go against you in a game where you're completely evenly matched, it can feel like the game has decided who's won the game. It doesn't. It's just that because you're so closely matched, those things have a more significant impact.
Yeah, and I was going to say, actually, I think the point you made about Evo's this cycle kind of highlighting perhaps this disparity between the importance of playstyles and attributes is quite interesting, because I actually do think they reduced the power of at least some playstyles going into this cycle. Like I do think they tried to do that, but I didn't see so many people complaining about this last cycle as they have done this cycle, which is interesting. And I do think it's just maybe more awareness building up. I know it's something we've talked about for ages, and I think most people who like very into the gameplay have been saying for a long time that playstyles are just so much more impactful than stats. But it does feel like it's been more obvious this cycle to just people a lot, like more generally, and so it's become a kind of bigger topic of conversation. And actually, yeah, I'd be interested to know from your perspective, Tazz, because I think we've talked about this as if we've kind of said it as if it's obvious, right, that playstyles do have more impact. But I was wondering, kind of, how far away are we from a good balance? Do you actually think it's fine to have playstyles being quite strong? Like, does it matter that much?
First of all, I like playstyles like as a thing that was added to the game in the way that gives something else, especially now combined with Evos. There's so much that you can just engage with and try out and work with. So I would be kind of sad when they remove them. But when it comes to the balancing aspect, I also would say, I think it depends quite a lot about what kind of aspect are we talking about in terms of the game. When it comes to passing, playstyle impact is massive, is huge. So I feel like there the impact is most noticeable. And then there are certain aspects, for example, I don't know how your community feels about it, but standing tackles itself in 26 are pretty good. So in comparison to last year, where Anticipate was the number one playstyle for the defense that you want to go for because tackling was very inconsistent, now this year, I can get away, I feel like, with a defender not having Anticipate. And I play with defenders who don't have it sometimes because maybe I'm just leaving out the Evo for now and see if I need it somewhere else. But I can still, I don't notice the difference between Anticipate, the player is having it or not as much. And there, like, I think it comes down to what kind of specific area you're touching, or looking at. For example, and I thought, I know this is going to sound surprising to a lot of people because Finesse, just in silver, I know has a lot of impact. But for example, I have a player since December who was back then super strong with 90 shooting already as a CM. He doesn't have Finesse Plus, but still he has a lot of shot power and 90 curve and just decent finishing. And with him, I go for the finesse shots inside the box, and they come so powerful, curled into the top bins, that for me, I'm going to put finesse shot at some point on him. But this is an area where I also see I can still score with a finesse shot, even though he doesn't have it because his attributes are high enough. So I agree that they changed it already a bit, but I feel like, especially because passing is so obvious, like playing first-time passes, playing incisive passes and stuff like this, they feel like it's so obvious that the playstyles make a huge difference. And I feel like also, like, I would say, like, you have to consider these kind of 10K people that vote here, they are really like part of the core community. And there's going to be a lot of connection to what also influencers or like streamers are telling you about playstyles, how they perceive the game. They are very influential on that. And I feel like this year, the narrative about playstyles is just put out there that in the last couple of weeks, and obviously this is how it goes. Like the whole how the question started, it was basically the discussion lately was about this. And why is this discussion out there? Because the streamers put it out there that they talk about it, and it's fair. I think that the influencers or streamers can be like some part of the community which can make people aware of something, but obviously this is going to shift a lot of the outcome also as well into one direction.
Yeah, I think it's worth extrapolating further and kind of going more on what you were kind of talking about, of like, actually they're not asking this question because they aren't thinking about changing it, right? They're asking this question because they are thinking about changing it. But the question then becomes, what playstyles are overpowered? Because I think that's more important than necessarily like I don't think you tone down every playstyle, because I don't think that's right. Like defensively, I don't know how important all of them are. I think intercept, yes, but I think people prefer intercept plus. But I wonder again how much confirmation bias there is, because they see the little symbol pop up above the head when they do intercept the ball. And it's kind of the same with the passing playstyles as well. Although I would say I think tiki-taka is probably the most noticeable when you want to play a first-time pass. You know if you have it or don't. Same with incisive as well. You know if you have it or don't based on how the through balls are played. But shooting, low driven's overpowered, and because of 𝘵𝘀𝘬, we all have that in our head. But actually, you could score low drivens with any player, really. Like, they're just a really powerful way of scoring a goal. And as Tazz has said, with finesse as well. So there is definitely areas that need balancing and areas that I don't think need balancing. Like, people are saying rapid's really important at the moment, and I agree, it does make a difference, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's overpowered. I wouldn't be like, oh, that needs toning back because pace isn't as important. I'd absolutely still take a 95 pace player with no rapid than an 80 pace player with rapid. And so there are elements to it that I think it is passing, and I wonder if they turned off the setting for just a week of having the playstyle plus pop up above people's head when they perform the action. I wonder how much people's attitudes may shift, because there is so much confirmation bias that goes on. I think, again, it's the reason why people think finesse shots are so overpowered, is because you see the symbol pop up above the head when you've got finesse shot plus. So yeah, there's definitely... it's not as binary, and they didn't ask the question as binary. It's not like goalkeeper movement where it's just one thing that you're toning. There's so many aspects to this that are important on the whole game, and playstyles do need to have some importance. They do need to be something that you notice the difference in. Otherwise, there is literally no point in having them whatsoever.
And it's interesting because I think the playstyles that they introduced at the start of this cycle seem relatively more balanced. Like I think like the Enforce obviously really quite strong, but I think it does. Well, they made some tweaks to it throughout the cycle, but I feel like it does need the sort of strength and physicality to kind of back it up. You can't just get away with having Enforcer Plus and like your player's going to be seriously strong against opponents who are quite strong as well. So I think there's like an element of like those more old playstyles still having like a huge amount of sway in terms of gameplay performance that does need looking at. But as you say, it's specific playstyles, and it is interesting how like maybe they were thinking, oh, we need to make changes to playstyles going into 𝗵𝐶 26 and make sure that some of these aren't super strong. It would make sense if they did actually do a fair bit to anticipate, and that's why we don't see it as being as strong this cycle. And that they were looking at specific ones, but maybe their focus was on those playstyles which were a bit stronger. And so intercept, for example, then they didn't maybe do as much to that, and now that's really seen as a stronger playstyle than others. So I guess it's like it becomes a bit of like a whack-a-mole thing where they're having to like constantly kind of knock down certain playstyles to kind of keep them in line.
And my brain heard whack-a-mole then, and I started going down the Shakira route. But anyway, let's move on.
I have one thing that I want to bring up, and it's, I think, coming back to an idea that Josh had when we were talking about goalkeeper movement. And how great would it be? We have so many cool live events and stuff like this, and EA has the chance to put out a live event. Why not put out a live event where like playstyles are either completely disabled, or they test the tuned down version there? Like, I think that would be really great, first of all, to give, because I don't know, like you see those kind of EAs putting out a tweet, and then you have like those kind of people who just post like these kind of 4 graphics, what should be removed from the game. And one part of this is playstyle. It's like, this is like always coming up in this kind of, I see it on Twitter or X. And I think it would be great for people to experience the game without playstyles and see like, do you actually would like that game? Just on gameplay. And then you obviously could think about the implications on how it would be actually in terms of how engaging it would be if there would be playstyles removed. But just experience how it is without playstyles, or at least with reduced playstyles. I think there would be ways to do it, or it would be really great for the community to experience that.
Mystery Ball doesn't have playstyles.
Yeah.
So we already have
a
kind of sort of mode, but it also doesn't have roles. The roles don't seem to work as in the same way either. And then everything's augmented because of the mystery ball that you're playing with. So yeah, I again, like they've got. We go back to that conversation we had about the patch and testing. They've got a bed that they can test within the game that they can disguise as a feature. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could have like a mode which is like old school FC or something. I mean, obviously it didn't used to be called FC, but it's just basically like no playstyles. Maybe no roles as well. Makes sense, but it could be interesting. I mean, it would be nice if, as Tazz was saying, they could specifically like do tuning and then put it in there so that people could try what they were going to release. And I'm sure people would have picked up that the finesse shots were breaking every couple of shots if they'd done that. Which, EA should probably do their own testing, but seeing as it ends up happening live, then...
It's much cheaper when we do it.
Yeah, much cheaper when we do it. Yeah. Very good point. So yeah, no, I think that would make sense. And actually, Josh, I didn't ask you, but like, where do you stand on playstyles? Like, do you want to see playstyles completely removed from the game, for example?
No, I don't want to see them completely removed from the game. Why are they there? Why are playstyles there? They're there because they offer another step in the power curve that allowed them to elongate the power curve. That's the only, there's no real other reason why you would need to change traits into playstyles and make them such a feature outside of you're turning them into a power curve thing that will sell packs, that will, make Team of the Year more impactful because they've got 3 playstyle pluses. So that's why it's there. I don't think it needs to be there. I would much sooner them start the game with 70 rated players as the top level and just allow the ratings to do it. The idea that you need this kind of... It's very, very gamified. We talk about this as a football simulation, but that is one of the most gamified elements. It's like a Street Fighter special move. It's like, I'm going to pull out my tiki-taka. That's just passing. So there is an element of it where I would have preferred it, the power curve push to have just been reduced the starting ratings. Clearly, there is an issue with that. They feel from a marketing perspective, from a game feel perspective, maybe it's difficult to build a game that moves with a stat distribution that would be that wide to go from 70 to 99. Maybe building a game that can work with those is quite difficult. But I don't think playstyles should go. I just think they've not quite got the tuning right, especially in something as simple as passing. I also think we shouldn't be in a situation where some playstyles are completely useless, like you just would not choose to have them. And so that there needs to be a balancing from that sense. Like, why do we have long throw as a playstyle? Why is it a playstyle? It doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, I mean, there is. I think it's interesting. I think that there is also this issue where, as you say, like a playstyle like long throw. Trying to think of some other examples. I guess dead ball would be one. It's like that being part of this like playstyle limit is always going to feel strange, right? Because okay, fine, dead ball, you want on one player, but like,
but then what's the point of free kick accuracy?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that is a good example of where the stat and playstyles are kind of that playstyle is overriding the stat quite clearly in most cases, and I think. But it just feels a bit silly when you have these like playstyles which have novelty, like they're kind of novel, but people just want to build evos specifically to avoid those, which leads to less gameplay variation, which wasn't the point of playstyles at all. So I think like there needs to be a look at that. Maybe there needs to be like a kind of separate tier of playstyles, which are just like there isn't really a limit, they're not as impactful, and that's fine. Maybe, and like. I think my biggest issue with playstyle is actually the fact they're kind of extremely binary. Like the whole point of stats is that there's this like sliding scale and there's this like granularity to it as you go up. Whereas with playstyles, it's like you have the base playstyle, big boost. You have the plus, another big boost. It's so simple. And I've talked before about having like potentially 3 different tiers would potentially help. So there's more kind of a step up. There's less like have and have nots in that situation. But I also think like potentially the communication of playstyles isn't as good as I would like. Like I would like to see maybe limit it to like 5 playstyles that actually fit on the card and have 3 tiers and have like show the like the lowest tier playstyle on the player, and then we can all see it on the card, and it kind of is something that's like, okay, there aren't as many that you can have on a player, but you know, there's more granularity, and it's just a bit more it's a bit less dominant, I guess, in that sense, and it's clearer.
I suppose my question would be, why stop at 3? Why not go to say 99 and have it rated between 0 and 99? And then that determines how well you're able to perform the task.
Yeah. What a great idea. But the thing is, like, I can kind of see it. Like, I think there's like I know how like the player base doesn't necessarily look into even in-game stats. There are so many people out there who don't look at in-game stats. So why not have things which are like more obvious, that can be shown on the card, that have an impact, that improve things that people know about? Like, there is like a logic to that. There's something nice about like that. But when you turn it into like these base play styles, which most people, vast majority of players probably don't even take into account, that having a huge impact on the quality of the player, I think that's where it kind of like loses its original idea, which was to be kind of a straightforward kind of improvement that's obvious.
But that there's an implicit thing in there that you're saying that it's obvious or that people know what it is. And yet it was only last week when I asked people we know at EA, does Aerial Fortress work both in attack and defense, that we were told that it only works in the defensive half. Now, this is something that had been going around in the community from a pro club's perspective, people talking about it. But then you start going through the content that's released, and Cristiano Ronaldo has Aerial Fortress. Well, I'm not sure they gave him that playstyle because they thought he was brilliant at clearing corners. Like, so why has he got Aerial Fortress as a playstyle? So there is that thing that you were saying about being more open with it and having it on the cards and showing people. A proper explanation of what it all does and how it all works would be, I think, the first thing, so that if you wanted to read about it, you wanted to understand how it worked, we could be told.
I mean, also, like, the gameplay team need to communicate with whoever picks the playstyles for players, because some of them make zero sense. And I think like that is genuine an issue for understanding, because you see the playstyle on Cristiano Ronaldo, you're thinking it works in attack, obviously. Like, I think you're right about that as well. I think we're almost wrapped up on this. I mean, obviously we could continue this conversation endlessly because it is something that's like hugely impactful and very complex, and we'd welcome listener thoughts. So do send those in, drop them in the YouTube comments, add your thoughts in the Pod Priority Questions channel in the supporter Discord for Gold or Icon supporters. And there was a little bit more, actually. We had a few questions on the patch, which maybe I'll just slip in quickly because I meant to mention this. There were some questions over whether some other things had changed as a result of the patch. I know someone was talking about potentially Bruiser being less important. I think it was 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦. Is that something that, or sorry, not appearing to activate, that was it. Is that something that you guys have noticed? Is there anything else that we should kind of flag as changing as a result of the patch?
I haven't noticed that.
Me neither.
Maybe it might be worth checking settings because sometimes when you get a patch, sometimes it can reset your settings. It might have moved you onto tactical defending and not advanced. So you might be asking for a shoulder barge, but actually you're not getting anything because the setting has changed. But I'm again, my placebo of seeing the little, bicep pop up above the head. I'm still seeing that. So
and then 𝘬𝘃𝘀 was saying, noticing some changes in terms of midfield movement, specifically with the CM box-to-box instructions, like moving into attack more frequently without being triggered. Is that something anyone's seen?
I think that happened on the patch before, where they made the AI defenders slightly less active and leave bigger gaps. I think it's the way that interacts with the role is that if they see a gap to run into that feels like a space, they will make that run forward. I'm not sure that changed in this patch. I think that's a hangover from the previous patch.
Okay, that makes sense.
But I am noticing my sentiments that are on box to box being in the box more.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I was also noticing that and then thinking, I switched one of mine to CM Deep Line Playmaker because I felt like I was getting too exposed in the center of the pitch. So maybe that's something to consider if you are playing like a 2 CM formation and feel like you're getting a bit too exposed. Right, let's take a break and we'll be back to talk more about Playstyles. And give
it's a gameplay podcast after all.
Oh, clearly 88% of people think that we should continue talking about Playstyles, so we'll do that right after the break. We'll do our breakdown of our top Playstyles for the fullback position right after this. Hello, welcome back after the break. Right, let's do our playstyle power rankings for the fullback position. And I say the fullback, this is the fullback role, so you're not looking for this player to get forward too much, more of a defensive player. And yes, we'll start off with you, Tazz. So we're doing 2 playstyle pluses and then 8 regular playstyles. And we're essentially going through a sort of 1 to 10 list of playstyles. So start us off.
Yeah, so like I noticed 10 playstyles is quite a lot, and if you can pick them, a lot of to choose from. The number one was super clear for me. I think it's very obvious here. 𝘂𝘀 has to be like the best one for the fullback position, because you get in a lot of running duels and you can really take advantage of the 𝘂𝘀 to just give the opponent a shove and win the ball like this. The second playstyle plus, and I think you probably all agree that 𝘂𝘀 is a must on the fullback as a plus. The second one, I was debating quite a lot. There are a lot of options I feel like that could go in there, and I was mostly thinking about either intercept or quick step. These two I feel like are really interesting for fullbacks, and at the end I went for intercept as the second playstyle plus for my fullback.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Do you think it's a bit? Yeah, do you have we talked about this a bit the other week. Do you think it make I personally think that if I'm gonna go for a not go for quick step, I'm probably gonna want that player to be lengthy to compensate, because I just think like pace is so important at fullback that actually if they're certainly explosive, but if they're controlled, then I'd probably be looking at the quick step plus. I don't know. Yeah, I'll get into my choices in a second, but I think that's probably a factor in what people choose as like pace playstyles, whether they have that already. But anyway, sorry, continue. Let's go down the list.
No worries. I don't know if Josh wanted to come in. Like he was, I think, reacting to the quick step selection.
No. I'm like I'd be interested to know like your feeling on especially as a playstyle plus, like why you think it's so important at fullback.
I think you can easily or like navigate a bit better, like picking up space. I feel like if you don't have quick step on the fullback position, you're more easily overrun, for example. So like I feel like you benefit. It's easier to compensate for like being in the wrong position, for example. But it wouldn't be, to be honest, I haven't played so much quick step plus on the fullback. Like for example, 𝘵𝘀 𝘁𝑚, the future star player that you can do as an СPC, I feel like has a good choice when it comes to the playstyle pluses, but I haven't played so much quickstep. This is more due to quickstep overall is very powerful, I would say.
That makes sense. Yeah. Sorry.
So
we actually talked in the break about how we wouldn't sort of break up your top 10, and now we've just broken up your top 10.
Like I was
sorry about that.
No, I think it's so much to cover, so I feel like if I would just sit in here like
anyway, right? Yeah.
Go through those kind of 10 playstyles, I feel like it would be kind of boring in a way, so like I feel like it's fine. So the other, like, so 𝘂𝘀 intercept as a playstyle plus for me. Then I already mentioned quickstep. 𝘬𝑁𝘁 as a playstyle, as a regular playstyle is something that I would like to play on the fullback. Relentless is just due to the space that they have to cover, or like how much they are running. I think it's very, very important. Also, it helps with the second player press that those kind of players activate longer. You tend to use that also on the outside quite a lot when you cover the center and you use just second player press, that this player stays longer on the ball carrier. You could also debate if this should be, or like could be a candidate for a plus, because then it's even more, but I feel like always Relentless plus is a little bit of a waste. Then you need some passing playstyles, and I think the two that you should choose, because you play most of your passes like this, is ping pass, so like a driven pass out of the defensive line, up forward to your winger, up forward to your CM is very, very powerful. And then I think we just talked about it, that tiki-taka itself just helps so much with the ground passes. Doesn't have to be necessarily the first-time passes, but just the ground passes itself. With tiki-taka, they are more accurate, and you benefit from this quite a lot. And I think this is already like a very strong package where I say like this player already covers the most important aspects for me. Then I talked about anticipate is something that I don't notice as much this year, but when we talk about 10 playstyles and 8 regular playstyles, there's definitely room for anticipate. And then also block. I sometimes notice this very nicely that this can be very helpful, especially if you have this player also selected and go for a tackle, for example, to increase the likelihood of a block. You can come up with some really, really fancy ways of blocking shots. And then the last one was like not so high in my choosing. And I think then I chose another passing playstyle with long ball, because sometimes like you can maybe play out of the defense with the long ball, or if you like to go for this kind of variation on the kickoff where you send it deep to the other side, then it can also be very nice to use the long ball. But yeah, that's already like then
absolute rat.
And to defend myself here a bit, I feel like kickoffs right now are completely like brain dead in a way how the defending team is doing everything on its own. So I don't feel any regret of trying to outplay this with a very simple long ball across the side and just moving forward, because kickoffs are, I don't know, like so weird. So I'm fine with going for the ratty techniques there.
Blame the game, not the player. Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Nice. Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. I think it's a good point. You kind of like identifying the kind of group of like real like important playstyles, I guess, and then the rest of them are kind of like, you know, nice additions. Yeah, Josh, do you want to take us through what you're going to go for?
Yeah, it's interesting because I thought this was easy, and then I started going through other playstyles, and I was like, "Ooh, I'd quite like that." And in fact, on the pod last week, I was extolling the virtues of block at fullback, and 𝗏𝘬𝘬 was kind of saying that for him, he doesn't feel it's as important as it would be on a centre back, because he feels it's more blocking shots than necessarily blocking like a pass or a cross. But yeah, there's an interesting discussion to be had there. So I would agree 𝗪𝘀𝘀 Plus was the first one that I put down. And then I'm kind of stuck between two. I think it depends how you play. I've got intercept as my first option and pinged as my second, because I feel like the ability to play the pass from your fullback into a midfielder, not just up the line. Up the line tends to be a bit more free as a pass that you would play, but playing that pass inside to a midfielder, if you have pinged and have that help, you can progress the ball really quickly. If you want to counter out of defense, if you want to break somebody's press, if you want to kind of bait them in to come and press your fullback and then ping it through. So I would probably err on the side of pinged. But then I would definitely have intercept then as a base play style. I've got jockey as base play style. I've got incisive and tiki-taka, because I feel like there are times when I want to play the through ball up the side to my winger rather than playing it as necessarily like a base pass. And I just think through balls without incisive are so useless. But that's maybe because I don't play on fullback defend. So maybe my fullbacks are a little bit more advanced up the pitch. So I'm playing that a little bit more. Quick step I've got in there as like as a base play style. And then it's kind of a bit tough. So I've got anticipate in there, and I would probably like anticipate because I feel like if you make a tackle and don't get the ball and you don't have anticipate, you're like, I should have had anticipate there. And then relentless and slide tackle. So I think it depends on your defensive style. If you're someone who's variable in how you try and win the ball back, then I think giving yourselves as many opportunities as you can to win that ball back. So that's having bruiser, so you can push them off the ball. That's having anticipate, so you can stand tackle. Adding in slide tackle so that you can try and like whip around someone who's kind of beginning to get in behind you. The number of times you're running alongside them, maybe just slightly behind. I've talked a few times about with slide tackle, you don't tend to get sent off. You don't tend to even get booked, even if you give a free kick away. But the number of times they like whip their foot around to get the ball is so massive that if you're someone who maybe struggles a little bit more or kind of wants to get man or ball, I think slide tackle is quite a fun playstyle to have. That's one of those like stylistic choices. I would also say that if you've got a shorter fullback, and I don't. It's not a big thing yet. It might become a big thing, but we've talked a lot about crossing and heading, and 𝘵𝘰𝗀𝘀𝘀 was talking about 𝘵𝗃𝗍𝘀𝘀 being someone they used in pro play and we're getting quite a lot of change out of. So then, have you got to think about aerial fortress at the back post? So I think that there's kind of that selection of 3 at the end, but I think the kind of there's 6 that you would just have to go for, and then it's kind of. I don't think you'll lose a lot by not having one of the other ones. Again, like Relentless is a great one if you're someone who uses second man press a lot, because it just gives you that extended second man press. Whereas because you're playing them as fullback defend, or most people playing them as fullback defend or just fullback balanced, they don't run up and down the pitch enough that you're going to need it for the stamina aspect of kind of them not looking tired. But then obviously stamina's useless this year anyway, because when you control a player, they don't feel the effects of stamina. Oh god, that's one of the stupidest changes ever. Anyway, yeah.
That's interesting. I think I'm ready to kind of throw the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit and do something a little bit different. So I would say that actually for me, because I'm generally picking fullbacks who are like physically already pretty strong and big, because I think in the fullback position that is my preference, and also that means they're generally lengthy, which is quite important, I think, to their ability to catch players. I actually would prefer, firstly, 𝘵𝘃𝗀𝘀+, because I don't know, I just find like it makes defending feel so much easier when you can move with a winger in that kind of really like controlled way that you can with 𝘵𝘃𝗀𝘀+, and you kind of can always change direction to match their movement. It makes them really hard to kind of get away, and I also find it really useful just for like holding space, because you can move the player around in that position. I've talked enough about 𝘵𝘃𝗀𝘀 on the podcast, so I'll move on from that. And then the second one is a little bit trickier, I think, and I think Bruiser is really good and I really like it, but I think because the player's already quite physical and I'm going to put base Bruiser and anticipate on them anyway, I'd actually be fine with having either Quick Step Plus or Intercept Plus as the second playstyle plus. Quick Step Plus is really good. Like it just, I mean, yeah, I definitely have it as a base playstyle, but I think it just really adds like that little bit of acceleration and combines really well with 𝘵𝘃𝗀𝘀+. I sometimes find if you have Quick Step and don't have jockey, they almost like overrun situations. Like they don't feel like as easy to control. But if you do have 𝘵𝘃𝗀+, I think it's really effective. So I'm basically looking at 𝘵𝘃𝗀+, either Quick Step Plus or Intercept Plus, and then obviously the base version of Intercept or Quick Step, and then Bruiser, and then Anticipate. Kind of obvious why I'm picking those. And then say Pinged. I think we kind of seem to all agree that that's probably the number one priority passing playstyle on a fullback. And then I'd move on to having tiki-taka, just because I think it's really nice for progressing the ball out of the back quickly, kind of in a slightly different way to obviously Pinged. And then actually, I think it's a bit, you've got like, what, I think at that point 3 more. And between those, I think, as we've all said, it becomes a bit of a toss-up between those, because they all have their different kind of merits. I think Relentless is really good, especially if you second man press. So that's probably one that you want in there. I think Incisive, as Josh said, actually can be really useful just as another way of like creating chances, like through balling to the winger, and you get kind of more ability to kind of deceive your opponent in terms of what you're going to do next. And then I do think both slide tackle and block are pretty useful. I think block like has, when I have a fullback with block, and sometimes I do feel like I notice them stopping shots, which is obviously quite important. And then like, I think also long ball, I'd agree, and it is a nice one for kind of completing the passing playstyles, I guess, in this case. But I also think that aerial again has some merit. I tend to use a bigger player there, so maybe not so important. But also I think the one that hasn't been mentioned that I quite like, and especially as I'm using a more physical player there, is press proven, because it kind of negates any issues they might have, like on the ball, moving the ball around. So that can be something like if you have a fullback who just you don't feel is as good at kind of moving the ball around and having the ball at their feet, that can be something that really kind of compensates quite nicely. So that's my kind of rundown, and a slightly different set, but pretty similar.
So I know I'm clinically online when you said holding space, and I could only think of Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande holding space for 𝘵𝘃𝗀𝘀+. No, I think the incisive ones. I was surprised that Tazz didn't mention incisive, and this might just be a kind of a build-up difference between high-level and mid-level play. Because for me, I find when I'm passing out of my back line, I'll have the ball, say, with my right back. I might play a 1-2 with my centre back to kind of get around a pressing defender. And so then I'm kind of ahead of my opponent's winger with my fullback, running kind of at their fullback, but with my winger ahead of them, or they might try and bring across a midfielder. And so if I have the ability to then play the through ball, whether that be like a curved one around the outside of them, or trying to kind of like put one in between, if I've got an inside forward that kind of makes that inside run, I can kind of trigger my winger to just run inside a little bit to then kind of take the central space in behind their midfield. Then having incisive is really important in those situations. Whereas I just wonder if in higher level play, it's less important because you're progressing the ball in a different way.
Yeah, I think depends quite a lot about how much you involve your fullbacks in actually creating chances. I think I know the situations when you're like staying back with the fullback and you just play the through pass down the line. That I feel like for this kind of pass, you don't need incisive as much. And this was the main situation I was thinking about. But obviously, yeah, if you tend to involve the fullback also more high up on the pitch, I think there you benefit more from incisive, because I think those kind of passes are more challenging to play. And I just remember, for example, Anas, who was playing in FC Pro. I was analyzing his match, his matches on the first session for a video on the guide. And there I noticed like it's part of his game plan that he likes to involve the fullback quite a lot. And for example, for him, I think it would make more sense, and also for you, if you trigger if you have them on the fullback role, like on their own, it won't be as likely that they move up on the pitch. But if you get them involved by playing 1-2 passes, by triggering runs also from the fullback, then I think this could be really, really interesting to also have incisive. I also had it on my shortlist, so to say, but then I was not really finding the clear situations for me where I benefit quite a lot from incisive. That's why I left it out. But I feel like if you notice that you play a lot of through passes with your fullback, yeah, then it should be also as part of your selection.
Yeah, it's an interesting one as well, because I think I wouldn't necessarily want to have two fullbacks with the same selection of playstyles, and I think that's something that's worth mentioning across these power rankings. It's it's actually quite nice to have some variation in your squad. So having a right back, like I've just described, who's quite defensively minded but can pass the ball out the back, might be nice. But then you might want a left back who, even if you're not playing the wing back or attacking wing back role, just has a little bit more on the ball and can dribble the ball forward, progress the ball in a different way. Because I often find that just having a player like that, maybe during the game I'm just well, this person's not really easy to break down in the way that I'm currently doing it, but let me use my fullback and bring them forward myself, trigger some runs and get them involved and kind of ask new questions, I guess. And I think that is probably something that is worth mentioning when we talk about these things. But yeah, that is fullbacks done for this week. And yeah, we've done quite a lot of the positions, so I have to see what we move on to next week. Before we go, we actually did have a question from, who was it? It was from Jay Dickinson, asking what tactics we were using. So I don't think we have time to run through ours, but I thought it would be interesting to ask you, Tazz, and you can let us know what you've been using at the moment, and maybe I guess we'll drop the tactic code in the show notes as well.
I just noticed when I read the question, is the question what is everyone using in the community or everyone using on the pod?
Yeah, I think on the pod, but maybe the answer for you is the same. I don't know.
No, I was playing lately 4-1-4-1. To be honest, I don't like to really go with the meta formation. So I think most meta defining right now is the 4-4-1-1 from Anders. A lot of people play it also with the double box to box, which I personally, by the way, and also coming back to the other question, find hard to play, because when I would not say it's very beginner friendly for the intermediate, because both CMs pushing up to the edge of the box or inside the box, you might be missing somewhere in the center. First of all, to recycle the ball, but also when you lose the ball as a backup. So I think Ben, you already mentioned it as well, that you can consider setting one of those CMs not on box to box, and I would actually advise this to a lot of players. And I like to play the 4-1-4-1 right now because just of the players I have. It's very similar to the 4-5-1, but you have this clear one CDM who has more of the defensive role. They are not really high in regard, I would say. This in 𝘵𝘂26, you can get away with CMs quite a lot. But in that case, I just want to use one player where I feel like he should not get as often into shooting positions. So and that's also a bit of a change up. As I said, I don't like to just play what everybody more or less plays because the pros are playing it. So it's a bit of a twist. And yeah, I can share the code if you want, but the setup is very similar to the very popular 4-5-1.
And are you playing a cam playmaker or shadow striker?
It's a 4-1-4-1, so there's no cam, there's 2 CMs.
4-1. Oh, and wait, 4-1-4-1. Oh,
yeah, and
okay.
the Anders tactic is 4-4-1-1, or like
okay.
Anders was playing. So that's
in my mind, I was like, oh, it must be.
This is like listening to the ski jumping at the Olympics. It's back fakey 360 720.
Yeah, I'm sorry if that was too confusing, but I'm playing the 4-1-4-1.
In my mind, I was like, oh, must
be your formation the melon grab? I don't know.
Okay, that is different, so that's interesting, right? Yeah. And do you find that your centre mids still support defensively? Because I think that's the reason why so many people have been playing like a flat line of centre mids, is because they thought the CDM was preventing those centre mids from getting as involved defensively, almost blocking the space. But
I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
But
I mean, at least you have a player there for sure who's going to help you. So
yeah.
I do think that has changed. And again, I think it was a fairly recent patch where it changed, where I think the reason why 4-5-1 was so popular was because though the midfield dropped as a block, because there was no reason for having those like steps between them, of having that back line, defensive midfield line. I think the way that the AI behaves now, that is far less pronounced when you have that depth. I've seen quite a few people beginning to run 4-2-3-1 now as a response to that as well, because the two DMs kind of sit in that space as well. So yeah, I'd be interested to give this a try.
Yeah. Also, maybe people finding that having defensive midfield is less of a problem when you have so many attacking tools now. Like people have a lot more like playstyles on their attackers, a lot more kind of creativity from individuals, whereas in the past, obviously, like I think like passing patterns were just like more meta in terms of how people were creating chances. So maybe there's a bit more kind of like people being willing to attack with less players, which obviously isn't often much fun, but we'll see, I guess, how things develop moving forward. So nice. So Tazz's 4-1-4-1 tactics code, to be completely clear, will be in the description of this podcast. I think, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I shared mine, and we talked about the 4-4-1-1 2 weeks ago.
We shared the one that Anders was using 2 weeks ago.
Obviously.
So, yeah. But the real one Anders was using, rather than the various fake ones that Anders was apparently using.
What is the, like, where do I find the real ones?
Yes, well, Tazz, you'll have to listen to that episode to find that. And you can also, if you want even more content, support on Patreon. Just search support for weekly. And, you can sign up, get an extra podcast every single week, including this week's content episode, which we do actually need to go and record. We're recording them in a slightly different order this week. But yes, you can check this episode out, that episode out as a supporter. And talking of plugs, we should also plug the guide, Tazz. People can go and get loads more information over there.
Yeah, I agree. Check out our YouTube channel, The Guide, which you can easily find by just typing in The Guide and maybe something 𝘵C related, how to defend or whatever. But also The Guide Plus. So like recently I'm working on a beginner course. So everybody who's just getting into the game, I teach a lot of the very important fundamentals, not only the ratty techniques, how to play the ball across the pitch, but actually how to learn the game fundamentally. And I think this is really, really a good course that I'm working on right now.
Amazing. Really good to know. And Tazz, thank you very much for coming on the episode again. Good to have you back on finally.
Yeah, it was great. It was great to check up again on all the things that are causing us so many headaches or that we enjoy about playing 𝘵C.
Definitely, yeah. And Josh, thank you very much as well for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just trying not to get carricked away at the moment.
Very good. And
do you think that guy's going to be happy if he has to have his hair done this evening? Or do you think he'll be like, that's my 5 minutes of fame over?
Well, yeah, I was wondering that. Yeah, the guy who's growing his hair out until Manchester United win 5 games. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I feel like he'll be sad. I mean, you know, he must.
Or maybe what he does is then, I'm now going to grow my hair out until United lose or don't win 5 games in a row, and then see how long that takes. And, you know, just flip it around the other way.
Yeah, that'd be very optimistic, but yeah.
Watch us lose now.
Yeah. I was going to say we've kind of jinxed it a little bit now. But yeah, what was I going to say? Thank you very much. Yeah, of course, all the listeners joining us, you can catch the podcast obviously on the various podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can subscribe there, on YouTube as well. We read all the comments, so do drop a comment. It is greatly appreciated. And thank you very much to all you supporters out there supporting the podcast, keeping it going. That is hugely appreciated too. And a big thank you as well to those icon patrons.
Dave B, Darren W, Hugh J, Rob W, Josh R, Ralph, Brian, Michael B, Adam R, Make B, Michael H, Rob S, Michael K, Neil P, Jake S, Tom B, Alex M, Damon H, L, James B, Sam K, The Shirt Locker, Lee A, Chris G, Mark M, Dom P, Rob P, Roger D, Waterman, Also Ran, and Juicy. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. Ultimate Team is a bit like life really. It has its many ups and downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.